Hello from the Chattanooga Film Festival 2023. I'm Nathan.
I'm Eric.
I'm Dan.
And we are the Video Monsters. And tonight we're going to be blowing up your life with questions as we discuss, well, blow up my life, with writers and directors Ryan Dickey and Abigail Horton. Abby, Ryan, say hello.
Hello.
We are so glad that you're joining us. We all really love this movie. We were talking a little bit about this before we started recording. Thank you for making a movie that we love so that it's actually easy to talk about it and to really dive into to some of the things that make this movie so great. But before we start getting into those questions, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and the journey that your movie has been on so far?
It's been quite the journey.
Yeah.
So we're married and met making films on set. And so we've always worked together. And then it was May 2020.
Yeah, we, just like everyone else, when the pandemic hit, everything kind of shifted and stopped, and we had to kind of take stock of what we were working on and figure out what to do next. So we decided to sort of look back at some of the projects that we had been developing, and this project sort of seemed like something so impossible to make during the pandemic that it almost like created a challenge of like, well, how would it be possible? Like, can we take something that typically would be like a very kind of larger scale sort of like action sort of, multi-layered intrigue thing and take it onto kind of a suburban level rather than a international scale. And so we had a kind of initial draft that I've been working on for a little bit, and then we decided to take the resources that we had, which at the time we were living in New York, and Abby's from Connecticut and her family is there, and we went and stayed with her parents and hunkered down, put all our stuff in storage, and wrote the script. And luckily a lot of the people that we work with, our crew people and some actors, including Jason, we're all available and not working at the time. So it's kind of like a lot of doors shut, but then a couple windows opened and made it possible for the production to come together in a very unlikely way. And we shot in October 2020.
How long was the shoot?
It was 18 days. And
it?
Yeah, and we only had 9 people on our crew because we really wanted to keep it super small and potted and safe. So small but mighty, as they say.
Yeah, everybody wearing multiple hats. And, again, like I was saying, we worked with a lot of the people that we brought on the crew before. So there was already this shorthand and camaraderie. And it was definitely like a sleepaway camp type of vibe, with everyone. And I think at the time, like, especially for people living in New York, like, they were so happy to come out of the city and, be in nature a little bit more and, just spend time with friends. And I mean, like, one of the best nights once we were all potted and fully quarantined, we all got together and like watched a movie, and none of us had done that in months and months, and everybody went apeshit, and it was great. It was great.
Yeah, 18 days. That is just an insane shoot. Chris keeps talking about Chat Film Fest as summer camp for cinephiles. And 18 days, it's like, yeah, that's 2.5 weeks. That feels like summer camp. So that definitely is right on brand with the fest. So before we start diving into these questions, because a lot of the things that you've mentioned, those tie in perfectly to the things that we really want to focus on. But before we start diving in, just a little bit of a disclaimer for anyone listening. We're approaching this Q&A as if we had all just finished watching this movie together. So there's gonna be spoilers. Like, literally our second question addresses the very end of the movie because we just have to ask about it. That's where all of our focus went to very early on. So if you're watching this before watching Blow Up My Life, just let us say that we love this movie. It's an incredible balance of humor and corporate thriller. There's some great actors that really bring you into the movie and some very artful technical skills on display. So if you've not seen Blow Up My Life, seriously, go watch it right now and then come back and listen to us prattle on about it for as long as we were allowed. All right. So with that out of the way, with all the spoilers, because again, we're gonna spoil. The tone of this movie is very clearly a comedy. You know, from bits like the opening monologue. You know, before I stick my nose up this trouble's butt, or no, but before I stick my dick, no, no. Like, there's so much comedy that hits you right from the very beginning. But so it very clearly has a comedic tone, but it's all played so straight. You know, like to the point where I legitimately could see this being a Tom Cruise movie based off of a John Grisham story. So this is a two-part, and I'm dead serious about that. Like first couple of minutes, I was like, oh, I could totally see Tom Cruise. So then when you make the Tom Cruise joke later, I was laughing my
I
ass
had the
off.
exact same reaction. I was like, oh, especially in Profile, Jason really has a Tom Cruise vibe
Yes,
to him.
it does.
I also kept waiting for him to run, and thank you for having him run. And so a two-part question. Why the decision to make a movie more in line with, you know, political thrillers or corporate thrillers rather than just an outright comedy? And how did you balance the tone so that it didn't start becoming a farce, you know, so that it didn't start straying into the territory of like Zoolander or MacGruber or Top Secret, all great movies, but not the tone of what this movie is. So how did you balance that?
Well, I think the initial sort of seed of the idea came from maybe more of a, I guess, sort of serious place, and thinking about the opioid crisis and, you know, corporate conspiracy and corporate malpractice and all of that kind of stuff. And you know, for me personally, like addiction and drugs and all of that has been a topic that's personally close to me, from loved ones losing their lives, ruining their lives, etc. And so it's been something that I've been really, you know, interested in, and I've addressed sort of in my previous work. And before, it was a little bit more focused on the people suffering from addiction. And in this case, I kind of wanted to show from the other side, from sort of inside the machine a little bit, and sort of shine a light a little bit more on the complicity of, you know, the people working there, whether they're even aware of it in the moment or not. And Jason, I think, is a really interesting character to kind of keep dissecting, because I think he wants to do good. You know, he maybe got in and had sort of somewhat conflicting sort of ideologies that he's moving with, but you know, ultimately he gets caught up and has to be woken up many times to sort of really get on the right track and kind of give up, you know, some of the spoils, I guess, of that lifestyle. And you know, hoping in some way that that's maybe the people that I'm hoping, you know, feel like this movie speaks to them in some way, you know. That's a bit more where the power lies, I guess. And so kind of starting there, but then also realizing that we didn't want to make something that was just a big essay film either. It needed to be entertaining, and
spinach in the popcorn,
we like to say. And you know, Jason, I always had Jason in mind for this role from the very beginning. We worked with him before on some other shorts, and he's just such a, you know, his political ideology and his boldness in his work with DeVrom Stiefler as the Good Liars. You know, they do such amazing stuff, and bring a comedy edge to it that I think is really effective, and then I think brings people in that wouldn't maybe necessarily just listen to something that is, you know, straight up sort of like critique of corporate culture. So that's kind of the foundation of it. And then as we got, you know, bringing in more characters to try and build out the dynamic with Jason, and bringing in DeVrom as a great foil for him and stuff, I think that's where some of the comedy really started to come out. And I think the hope is that the extremes of the drama and the comedy kind of like keep the tension, you know, taut the whole time, and keep the audience kind of on a more edgy roller coaster, you could say.
Well, it really leads into that whole, you know, tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yeah.
Where, just from a personal note, I am a middle school teacher, And the thought of a vape and an app that tells you when to vape is the worst nightmare I could possibly think of.
Yeah, but you can see it happening pretty soon too.
Oh, exactly.
100%.
So of course it's a success. Of course it's an incredibly successful app.
Yeah.
Which then, with a lot of the stuff that stems from addiction, the treatment is also then needed to be treated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the Ouroboros effect of it.
Yeah, there's always that extended step that's is almost at times worse than the initial treatment.
Right.
And I like that kind of keeps the wrong man thriller a little more real, a little more suspect, because far too often in these wrong man thrillers, the person comes from a very pure place of heart. They want to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and of course their life gets torn down by that. Whereas, as you put it, Jason is just fantastic at playing an asshole. He's really good. He is very, very unlikable, and I like how you used it, like almost his social media presence to present that unlikability, because god damn it, we all hate influencers, it seems like. So by putting him online on a Snapchat or a TikTok or something, you're automatically like, oh, I hate this guy. And it reminded me a lot of I recently rewatched these, so that's probably why it reminded me a lot of Alan J. Pakula's conspiracy thrillers of the 70s. Where where in the Parallax View, it's Warren Beatty, but man, it's a really unlikable Warren Beatty. Was it a conscious choice to kind of play into that, to make him feel so unlikable, so that you really, for the longest time, don't necessarily know if you kind of want him to succeed and do well, but you feel like it's just not going to happen? Was that a conscious choice from you folks?
Yeah, we wanted his motivation to be a little muddled. He knows that eventually does know that it's the right thing to do, but he's also been a part of it. Like Charlie says, okay, maybe you did fuck up the app, but okay, now you're not doing it. That's good. Okay, that's a step. And like, is he just doing it to clear his name? Does he want to be this like golden boy again? Does he want his legacy to have that iconic nature around it? Is that why he's doing this? So we liked really playing with this idea of why he's doing it. But I do think that it does. I like to think he redeems himself a bit by the end. He doesn't always make the right decisions. No one's really making the right decisions in this. But at the end, I do think they are trying to, which is kind of our little like, let's try to do let's be aware of how we're all taking part in this system, and like let's try to take actions that do the right thing. But of course, it's a movie, it's drama, it's excitement, so they don't always do it well. And I think that creates more tension and hijinks for them to get involved in.
And he very much, it's not a happy ending, but he very much earned the ending he got, where he, again, to spoil this, he does not make it to the end of the film.
Yeah.
And he meets that end by confronting someone that he's needed to confront, face pretty much the entire movie. And I really enjoyed that it didn't turn into a, hey, now we get a fist fight scene, and that's how he's gonna turn out on top. He's gonna James Stewart his way out of this by clocking the guy in the face, and that's how it ends up. It's the bad guys often come out on top in these types of real life situations for a reason.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. That we did feel like Jason's story had come to an end, and his kind of ego brought him to that ending as well. He didn't leave when Charlie says to leave. He wants to do a little bit more. He wants to get more out there.
He's changed, but he's still himself as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really felt natural that Charlie continue the story and like be kind of the end storyteller, the end hero of the film. And something that, I don't know, kind of maybe on a very deeper, subtle level, this is kind of about the opioid crisis and kind of for-profit healthcare and corporations' involvement in that tragedy. And so to have Ben, the CEO, kind of do this violence at the end, instead of just through emails or board meetings or you know, these kind of layered, removed ways that this harm is created, it did feel kind of powerful to see him do some violence, because that is what he has been doing in very like removed layers. So
Yes.
kind of just on like a really like kind of personal story level, like that was important to us as well.
Yeah, some like literal blood on his hands.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah.
again, yeah, isn't just on the keyboard kind of thing. And that's, I think, where and how a lot of, I hope at least a lot of these people can do these horrible things, is they see the people that they're affecting as just numbers on the screen. And, you know, and it sort of is just numbers, and it's just, you know, more fodder for the stockholders and whatever. So to kind of put it in that literal way and like literally pull the trigger, wanted to really, wanted to follow through with that and feel like there was something.
Well, these decisions do kill people. It's
absolutely.
You know, and you folks put it in a very real, you know, situation where, you know, he is the proverbial gun of this industry,
right?
And they turn it on people all the time, and there's cost benefit analysis, and you know, Jason's on the wrong side of that variable. He's on the wrong side of the equation, and that's very matter of fact.
I find it interesting that like that's kind of the showdown at the end, and that he is face to face with Jason, and like to compare those two characters, because it does feel kind of like, since Jason starts off, he's kind of pushed in, he's a very passive character at the beginning. Like he's only doing these things because he's motivated by survival, because like you set the stakes up very clearly up front that he's lost his job, he's living out of his van, he's got to go to these rich people's houses and be reminded of the things that he used to have. To the point where like he gets pushed into heroism because he is willing to compromise his ethics to steal people's information, which I think is very interesting. And it made me wonder, like, the sliding doors idea of like, okay, let's say that if Jason was not fired, if he was promoted, like, you know, it seemed like he would have been on the cusp of being promoted, like if he had been able to work his way up the ladder in this company, would he have been a part of this doxy scheme? Like, and that's like, do you think that he would be, because too, whenever he finds out the information, the first thing he does is he makes excuses for Gary, right?
Gary,
for Gary. He's like, yeah, he's a good guy, and you know, the guy who later tries to kill him. So yeah, do you think that that's something that he would do? Like, do you think that he'd be willing to do that? Is his heroism specifically just because he was pushed into it?
Was he woken up to it, you know?
Yeah.
Did he finally see the truth a bit? Or did he really not have a choice?
Right. And I think, you know, Gary is the other side of that coin.
Yeah.
You know,
they were besties.
They're besties, and they would have been partners in crime in this thing, you know, have this extreme sort of, you know, change of circumstance happen for Jason. So I hopefully that's kind of the, you know, the two-sided mirror of them when they're having their confrontation in the parking deck and everything, that sort of sets up that duality that Jason is really found a different perspective on this, and Gary is still stuck in it. And that's where the impasse is.
It's like this very interesting underlying like subtext of class.
Also, I love that takes place in a parking garage. It's another throwback right to the 70s thrillers. It's like, of course it's in a parking garage, because that's where all the really cool confrontations happen when there's a conspiracy involved.
Right now it's over here. The lighting is moody.
It's half public, half a little private, and it's a good spot.
Well, one of the things that I love so much about the ending is, well, two things really. One, it's not out of nowhere. Like it was very shocking, but it still totally felt like it fit within the tone of the movie. You know, it didn't feel like an out of place, like, what? How are they doing this? It was, that is exactly what's going to happen. And the other thing that I love about it is sort of the like midpoint bookend with the end of the movie, where Kara says to Jason, fuck them before they fuck you. That is literally what happens at the end, where he fucks what's the CEO's name? I'm drawing a blank on it right now. Blake. Yeah, so he fucks Blake by sending out the email before Blake fucks him by shooting him in the face. So I just love that little that little midpoint bookending to really bring some closure. And speaking of people being fucked over, I've seen some of the interviews that Jason and Davram have done with some Trump fans.
Yeah.
Was any part of this conspiracy element inspired by some of the responses that the people who have been so easily duped and fucked over? Has any of that influenced sort of the approach to the story?
I don't know if I would say so.
I wouldn't say directly. I mean, I guess I would say they Jason and DeVrum do have, again, kind of like a boldness to them for confrontation. And I think maybe that something in there felt resonant. But that's a good observation. I wouldn't have put that in to think about. I mean, we love all those man on the street, sort of they do. They're amazing, and some of the responses are unbelievable. And yes, these people have been absolutely brainwashed, in a very similar sort of fashion. But I wouldn't say directly that sort of influenced this, I guess. But
yeah, it just feels like that sort of thing where it's just like, oh, don't you know that the government's controlling the businesses and the businesses are controlling the vapes and they're only giving you the vapes so they can get you to buy more vapes. Like, it sounds so diluted, but then as you're watching it roll out, it's just like, well, yes, obviously this is exactly what's happening. So
well, that's what we always talk about, that conspiracy theories. You're like, well, a lot of crazy things have happened. I mean, if you do break down how things work, you're like, that kind of sounds like a conspiracy. And so
right, there's maybe one little nugget of truth about people hiding information to get away with what they want to get away with, and that happens ubiquitously through every industry on Earth
for 4 years between 2016 and 2020.
Yeah.
But it is a fascinating kind of area of society to look at and try to understand why these things happen, why these theories take off.
Yeah, and I mean Doxy and the product and everything is just outside of what actually exists today, just hopefully just enough that it almost feels more real. That's kind of the hope.
It'll be a product within a month, I feel like. I really do.
It's got a real like near future vibe kind of thing.
Yeah. Let's hope not, but yeah, that's hopefully again it sort of then speaks to this sort of larger truth about industry selling you the disease and the cure, and it's not exclusive to one product like OxyContin or something, it's
cigarettes and
fucking potato chips. It's like whatever else, so like it's a capitalist sort of cycle.
And for this to exist, you really need the character of Ben Horner's Blake, where again gives off very strong Donald Trump Jr. vibes, where he might not be the smartest man in the room, to put it generously, but he hires people who know what they're doing and then takes the credit. So everyone thinks he is much more important than he really is to the whole system. You know that he's going to get thrown under the bus by his corporate overlords as soon as those emails continue to hit. He's got a real sense of unearned success to him, which leads to one of my favorite scenes in the whole film, and that is the phone sex call, where his specific kink is poverty. Where the fact that to him the most degrading thing he can think of is to have $5 in his bank account. And how that's really, really played on, where for him the most degrading thing is the no money, the no power. Being at the bottom of the barrel is where he would be at his lowest. And I love that, again, you said that the other side of that mirror for them is Jason, who finds himself at that particular bottom and has to work his way up. And the balance between those two, how one has success that is unearned, it feels like the other has earned that success and is trying to at least earn some of the integrity that should come with that back. How purposeful was that scene in kind of creating that character for Blake?
I mean, like, Jason, you know, he makes all these comments of like, oh my God, what a nice house. Oh, okay, it's better than my van. Oh, espresso machine. You know, he does still want that life. And I think that is our culture. We know that those people are unhappy, morally compromised, hollow, but we still want
the amenities.
We still want the house, you know? So I think that was important. And yeah, that Blake is striving for that no matter what, even if it does lead to total just degradation of his soul.
And I think there's, you know, again, kind of bringing back earlier, talking about like, you know, if Jason's circumstance wouldn't have changed, he was kind of on the trajectory of Blake. And I feel like, you know, that showdown at the very end, they're not too different of people. There's more similarities than differences almost, you know, at the end. And I think that duality, I think, is important to talk about, because it is a couple of decisions, a couple of circumstantial things that can make your world completely different from someone else's, where, you know, and then you feel like you're different, and then division.
I just also want to note super quick about Blake on the phone. One of my favorite lines, and again, balancing that tone between humor and corporate thriller, is when he says D, like dinosaur scientist.
That was all Ben.
That was fantastic. Yeah,
we're just like sitting behind the camera.
Yeah, like he just killed that.
He is so funny.
Ben is, I know,
like, what an actor. I mean, all of them so incredible, but watching Ben come on and just like nail every single take, you're just like, should we do another one? I mean, I just kind of want to watch it.
And
like,
and he, you know, he obviously he can portray this like very kind of, you know, brooding personality very well, but he has like such a good sense of humor. And I think so he pulled in, you know, just some of the, like, I love the moment in the interview with him, and the interviewer was like, well, that's all I need. He's like, great. You know, just kind of little bit of affectations that he's got a deep awareness of the comedy, I think, within all of it. So
amazing.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure to work with.
So speaking of the cast, it's interesting to watch this movie and then think back on it and be like, oh, there are actually only like 5 major characters throughout this entire movie, which is it's especially interesting to me because this movie feels so grand in scope. You know, it's this huge conspiracy thriller. You're giving me a thumbs up there, Ryan, so it sounds like you I'm glad to hear that we can kind of confirm for you that you achieved what you were going for there. So I guess that's kind of what my question is like, how did you manage to make this movie feel like so big and like this conspiracy like so large, you know, with such a small cast of people?
That was a real challenge for sure. You know, kind of 2 parts. One, it was tons of COVID restriction at the time. You know, we had to quarantine people. We could only
we only had 5 people because we could only have 5 people like touch or be in the same space at any time. So we had started maybe with 8 or 10 in a script, and then we're just like, oh, that's not going to work. And so we wrote them out until we just had 5 left.
Yeah, consolidated down, but I think it was a really good lesson in just distilling down, you know, what elements are really at play, where is the scene going, where does it need to be, what is the motivation of this character, and what is the role literally of this character in, you know, Jason's journey and the
information.
Real, where is what is the information? So it was like it was tough love, you know, to give the script, but you know, to really filter out that stuff and try to get to the essence of it, and work with the circumstantial COVID restrictions on top of that. And then, you know, for the scope of the whole story, again, it was kind of like initially thought of a lot larger, but then once we started bringing it down, we really kind of realized like it's about what you show, but it's also a lot about what you don't show. Because I think if you try and sell too much, like this is so big, like and you can't,
then you would know that it wasn't that big.
Yeah, if you're trying to really convince the audience the whole time, like, trust us, this is a real product and everyone has it, and like let's go into every home and show giant billboards.
Like 1% holding it once.
Yeah, and I think you just kind of infer, you know, a little bit more, and I think that intimacy of the spaces actually kind of helps with that, and you're not thinking about so much about where this product lives globally or something, but there's enough just little clues that let you know, and you don't linger on it too much, because it's not, at the end of the day, like so important that we know that about it. It's more important how the characters are involved with it. So that was sort of the character first focus, I think, is how we try to take it.
Absolutely. I think I definitely think it helps to keep it more intimate. Like I feel like you can get even just showing like the close-ups of the spreadsheets and stuff whenever you see all those big numbers on there. You're like, "Oh, okay, I can see like how huge this is." And we still remain like kind of rooted to the story itself by just like caring about the characters in the film. So, bravo to you.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Yeah, and every single actor just killed it. With it being such a small cast, so much of the movie has to rest on their shoulders of, can they play this convincingly? Can they get you to care about them? Like we talked about earlier, Jason at the start of the movie, kind of an asshole, but like such a charming one that you are immediately on board. And then when he's like, Lottie, fucking da, it's like, what? Okay, you're an asshole, but I still kind of want you to do good. And then with Blake, the first time that you see him in that interview, and he's just, like leaning back and just like, It's like, oh yeah, you are a complete asshole. Totally know exactly who you are. So like you do such a great job of framing these characters and really getting to the core of who are they, and like what is their personality, and what do we need to know about them to be invested. Everyone does an amazing job. But I especially want to highlight Carrie Young because she fucking killed it. Every single scene, not to take anything away from Jason. Jason was great.
Sure.
I laughed every time that he was being funny. I cared about him. He was charming. This is not taking anything away from him. But every single time that Carrie was on screen, she was great. She was perfect. I loved everything. So I've got another 2-part question specifically regarding Kara. One, are we going to get a sequel focusing just on her? Because I need that.
Yes.
And 2, this is a lesser question, but maybe inspiration for the first one. The part at the campfire where she is talking to Jason's recorder, and like she puts on kind of like her podcasting voice. She does such a great job that instantly I was getting some major Adrienne Barbeau from the Fog vibes. So I would love I would love to see like a Thelma and Louise like road movie with Adrienne Barbeau and Carrie Young, where they are just being like sultry and like just owning everything. I need that movie to happen. So can that please be the follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Adrienne, is her contact down in Belize, and she goes down to escape extradition. Yeah. I mean, yes,
Kara's incredible.
Kara is incredible. She, she was introduced to us by a friend who was really tapped into the theater scene, and we auditioned her. We knew immediately that she had it, totally understood it, totally killed it, and she was just wonderful to work with on set. And I think it's a fun thing to have her kind of sequestered to the computer for the first half of the movie, and you kind of keep wanting more. And then when she finally actually comes up in real time with Jason and we're in the scenes with her, it's just so satisfying to really see her flourish. And I think even though, yes, a whole movie could rest on her being the lead 100%, no doubt about it. I think that it's a fun element of this, and of course, like ending with her and keeping her in mind, I think at the forefront as the credits are rolling and afterwards, I think is where we wanted to leave people, and she just makes such an indelible mark on the whole film for sure.
Absolutely.
Following up with, again, the small cast and crew, one of the things that I really enjoyed about this film is how locations looked different. From the sounds of it, you did not have the ability to travel up and down the eastern seaboard to go to an airport, to go to a rich person's, to go to all these different places. But yet, from the setting of the van to the empty house where Blake was staying, to the house with all the, I mean, not where Blake was, where the other guy, the best friend, was staying, to the fully furnished, wonderful IKEA catalog house with Blake. The film had such a very good look to it. So of course I'm going to look up the cinematographer for the film, which, surprise, is you, Ryan. Right. You know, you guys wore multiple hats for this: writers, directors, editors, cinematographers. I was actually a little bit disappointed to find out someone else did the wonderful music. I was expecting one of your names to pop up on that as well.
The man.
That's amazing.
How did those divisions of labor come about, other than, I'm assuming a lot of it was due to necessity, but beyond that, how did you pick who was doing what, and how did you establish those different looks for everything that you did?
Well, I guess for roles, like Ryan is a professional cinematographer. I worked professionally as a producer. So we kind of just went with our strengths. And we've written and directed together before and knew that we wanted to do it together. So then, I mean, Ryan also produced it as well. Like we just did what we needed to do, kind of, but luckily we did have like many years of experience leading up to it to say like, okay, I'm confident I can do this. And then the people on the crew are also just like incredible artists. And we're so down to just support in all these different ways. So I really think if we didn't have such amazing, you know, small but incredible artists around us, there's just absolutely no way. And they were all just so encouraging and thoughtful and innovative, and we all just like made it work all the time. And there really wasn't a question if, you know, we were going to get the shot or not. It's like, oh, maybe we'll try it this way. Oh, look, we can do it this way. So it really just felt like we're all, you know, we're all filmmakers. We're all making this together. And then in terms of like our look and locations, I mean, we shot in Middletown, Connecticut, which, shout out, they were incredible, like really hooked us up with amazing, just like public locations or like names of private contacts to get in touch with. And people are just super supportive. When you're not shooting in New York and LA, people like making movies. It's great. And so I do think like we do have a lot of locations in the film for like such a small film, I think. But I do think that helps keep it interesting and keeps him bopping around and keeps us, you know, feel like we're really taking a journey throughout the whole thing, to kind of visually, you know, we only have 5 characters, but we are visually changing it up a lot, I think, which helps it feel like exciting and moving along.
And I think we were only able to do all of those company moves because the crew was so small.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
So, you know, something that can be seen as a disadvantage.
You could do like 4 locations in one day.
Yeah, you know, and really we're very mobile and flexible in that way, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, as far as shooting it goes, like I think because during the writing process and shooting and producing it, you know, shot listing and shot design and blocking all just kind of came out of those conversations sort of so naturally that we were already thinking about, okay, this is how we got to cover it. This is how we're going to do it. And so it just kind of became a natural kind of progression in that way. And, you know, to shout out my crew, Ramel Gentiana, Gaffer, Nikita Carpenter, AC, and Stephen Rathier, who's key grip and Steadicam op. Bopping back and forth, and we were lucky enough to have 2 camera bodies. So we had one A-cam kind of like always built, and then we always had the second body on the Steadicam, so we could kind of like swap back and forth, and that also made it possible for us to move quickly and get through the scenes. And you know, we were really, again, trying to kind of stay like character centric in the blocking and stuff. And so we really wanted to just try and showcase that as much as possible. So when it came to lighting and everything, like each of these locations really kind of tried to be as influenced by the locations and the restrictions within the locations as much as possible, because I think that ultimately gives each one a more unique look. And we didn't have very many, you know, we had a small, you know, G&E truck, if you even want to call it that. It wasn't even a truck.
We had a truck, 14-foot.
A 14-foot truck, but few units to kind of set up a sort of like rinse and repeat process of like, here's the big key light, here's the big whatever, and really tried to respond to the location to make them again feel more unique. And I think again that when they're all more unique, each one feels separate, the whole thing adds up a little more, it becomes a little bigger, and hopefully that adds to the, the scope, the whole thing.
And how did P. Rose get involved?
Well, I've been fanboy. Yeah, I'm just like straight up fan of Paul Rose, aka Scuba, who's a London-based musician, artist, record label owner, and it's just a real big fan. And even from the very early days of the outline of the story, I like to make like little kind of mixtapes of just like inspirational music and stuff like that when I start writing. And he had this song that I just kept using, and that kept coming up. And then when we first kind of sat down with the footage, I was using it in this temp track, and I was like, man, we should just like cold call, reach out. And we did, and it all ended up coming together, and he was just an absolute joy to work with.
Yeah, great collaborator.
And I think he really helps blend the tone of bringing out the comedy, bringing out the tension, and everything sort of in between. It really helps, I think, signify to the audience, even though sometimes I think it's intentionally a little ambiguous whether something's like supposed to be funny or not or whatever. I think he's kind of helping guide just a little bit extra that we needed, and he just totally killed it. It was great to work with him.
Yeah, the music definitely contributed to it, because I think that it was during the opening scene, there were just a few little themes that kept popping up that reminded me of the Axel F theme from Beverly Hills Cop.
That is Harold Faltermeyer, absolutely an influence for sure.
I think we had that in our like vibes playlist. Some Harold.
Yeah, some Harold Faltermeyer for sure. Yes, Axel F, a seminal work, no doubt. And again, something, that film definitely also an influence on this of, in the beginning of that movie when his partner dies, it's a really kind of somber, serious scene, and it like plays it so well, and then the comedy ensues, and you take it seriously too. So that helped, certainly paved the way for us.
Yeah, if I were to do a triple feature of this movie, I actually would probably do Opportunity Knocks, and then Blow Up My Life, and then Beverly Hills Cop. I feel like that would be a nice balance of staying a little bit more on the pure comedy side, and then going a little bit more into the darker by the time you get to Beverly Hills Cop. But yeah, I feel like that's where this movie fits on the spectrum. And I mean that like with all sincerity, and hopefully it's coming across as a compliment with the opportunity.
Yeah, totally.
I know not everyone loves that movie, but I watched that just so many times as a kid. So
yeah, I had the music especially. I had some strong Beverly Hills Cop vibes too. I even had that in my notes.
No way.
And he did the Fletch theme. Harold Faltermeyer did the Fletch.
Oh, of course, Fletch. Yeah,
we were definitely had on our reference list for Scuba.
That's awesome. Oh man, I want to ask you about that reference list, but we are coming kind of close to our time limit here. So I guess what we'll end with is just to ask you all: is there anything else about the movie that you want to discuss that maybe we didn't touch on in our questions, or just something you want to highlight about the film before we head out?
Oh man, I feel like this was such an in-depth conversation. Thank you for letting us just pour out everything we love talking about, which is the movie. Yeah.
And our wonderful collaborators that made it possible. I mean, we wore a lot of hats for sure, but it absolutely takes a team and a village, and in all the stages of the process,
because each person brings something that you just in your own life experience and limits of your imagination cannot get to by yourself. Everyone just pushes, and you just end up with something so much greater than you could have done on your own. So it is such an exciting art form.
All the actors contributed so much to their characters, to the tone, to the morale. Their excitement and enthusiasm helped bring the crew through, and vice versa. The crew's enthusiasm helped bring, and professionalism helped bring the actors out and to do their best. So we couldn't be happier about all of the people that made this possible.
How about long live indie film?
Yeah, long live indie film. For real, like this was a very, very homegrown kind of thing, and kept it indie. We're self-distributing it. It's going to be out in September on, you know, VOD and stuff. And it's been a very educational, humbling, thrilling journey making this. And so,
yeah, that's a good note.
Yeah, that's a good note.
Yeah.
Well, again, we absolutely loved it. You answered one of my questions preemptively of what's next for it. So where can people follow you or the film? You know, what social media presence or website? You know, where do you want people going if they want to find more information either about yourselves or about the film?
So our website is blowupmylife.com. Pretty self-explanatory, and our Instagram is blowupmylife.movie.
Yeah, Blow My Life _movie on Instagram.
So we've just been, you know, we've been posting updates there, and we'll definitely post about, like, we'll have a trailer coming out soon, and then like for our September digital release, and then hopefully a few in-person events to just, you know, celebrate everyone's hard work and you know, party, because that's what you really want to do at the end of making a film. So so yeah, those will be places to update everyone about what's next.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for talking with us. We
love the movie. Thank you.
Had an absolute blast talking about it with you. And now go enjoy the rest of Chat Film Fest. There's still a few more days left. There's still a lot of great movies to see. And be sure to follow us at linktree.com/videomonsterpod so that you can get, you know, all the links to our socials and upcoming episodes, etc., etc. So yeah, again, thank you so very much for joining us.
Yeah. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for watching. Yeah, this is great.
And thank you for everyone watching the movie.
Thank you for watching the movie.
All right, that's been it for Video Monsters at Chat Film Fest. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.